Have you ever thought about why some people accumulate wealth while others, even with good incomes, remain stagnant? The truth is, there's a hidden code in the financial habits of millionaires, something most people ignore or apply completely wrong. And the most alarming part? This might be blocking your path to prosperity without you even realizing it. Are you also falling into the same traps that keep millions of people from financial freedom? In today's video, you'll learn a simple but incredibly powerful strategy that the wealthy use every day, one that almost no one talks about. What you'll discover here has the potential to completely change the way you handle your money. So, what's the well-kept secret millionaires don't easily share? Could it be something you've never considered? Or the exact opposite of what you've always believed? Watch until the end, because the answer might surprise you, and who knows, it could open the doors to a life of abundance. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to learn the principles that truly lead to wealth. Here's something that'll shock you. Most millionaires don't put their money where you think they do. While everyone's chasing the latest hot stock or trying to time the market, the truly wealthy are playing an entirely different game. They've figured out that relying solely on stocks is like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. You might see some gains, but real wealth keeps slipping away. Think about it this way. When you buy a stock, you're basically handing your money over to someone else and hoping they'll make it grow. You've got no control over the company's decisions, no say in how they spend their money, and certainly no guarantee they won't mess things up tomorrow. The rich understand that true wealth comes from having control, not from crossing their fingers and hoping Apple's next iPhone will boost their portfolio. But here's where it gets interesting, and where most people get confused. Millionaires don't avoid the stock market because they're scared of it. They avoid putting all their eggs in that basket because they know something most folks don't. They've learned that passive investing, while comfortable and easy, creates a dangerous dependency on things you can't influence. And once you start depending on assets you can't control, you're setting yourself up for a much bigger problem that goes way beyond just stocks. Now, let's talk about what the financial gurus won't tell you about passive assets. Everyone loves the idea of set it and forget it investing. Throw your money into something and watch it grow while you sleep, right? But here's the thing millionaires figured out long ago. Truly passive assets aren't building wealth. They're just storing it. And there's a massive difference between the two that most people never grasp. Picture this scenario. Your neighbor Bob puts $50,000 into a rental property and sits back, thinking he's got passive income coming his way. Fast forward 6 months, and he's dealing with broken water heaters, late-paying tenants, and property taxes he didn't budget for. Meanwhile, Sarah takes that same $50,000 and starts a small digital marketing business, actively learning, growing, and scaling it. Guess who's actually building wealth versus just hoping their asset doesn't become a liability? The wealthy understand that real money isn't made when you're completely hands-off. It's made when you're actively involved in creating value. They don't want investments that just sit there. They want assets that force them to get smarter, more skilled, and more valuable in the marketplace. But here's what's really wild. This active approach to wealth building reveals something even more dangerous about how most people handle their money. Here's where most people sabotage their wealth without even knowing it. They fall in love with fixed expenses that eat away at their money every single month. You know what I'm talking about? The fancy car payment, the upgraded apartment rent, the premium gym membership they use twice a month. Rich people look at these recurring costs like vampires slowly draining their financial lifeblood, and they're absolutely right. Let me paint you a picture that'll make this crystal clear. Meet Jennifer, who makes $80,000 a year and decides she deserves a nice BMW. Hey, she works hard, right? That $600 monthly payment might seem manageable, but add insurance, maintenance, and depreciation, and she's really spending about $900 every month on transportation. Over 5 years, that's $54,000. Money that could have been invested in something that actually grows her wealth, instead of disappearing into thin air. Millionaires think differently about every recurring expense because they understand opportunity cost in their bones. They ask themselves, if I spend this $900 monthly on a car payment, what am I not doing with that money? They know that same $900 invested wisely could become then $1,500, then more, growing instead of shrinking. But the real kicker is when you realize what specific types of assets create the biggest wealth-draining traps of all. Now we're getting to the stuff that separates the wannabes from the truly wealthy. Those shiny, prestigious assets that look like symbols of success but are actually wealth destroyers in disguise. Beach houses, yachts, vacation rentals, expensive art collections. These aren't investments, they're money pits dressed up in fancy clothes. The truly rich understand this, which is why they avoid these traps like the plague until they've already built serious wealth through other means. Let's break down what a beach house really costs, because the numbers will blow your mind. Say you buy a $500,000 beach house thinking it's an investment. After all, real estate always goes up, right? Well, add property taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities, and the opportunity cost of that down payment, and you're looking at about $30,000 per year just to own the thing. That's $2,500 every single month, whether you use it or not, just so you can say you own a piece of property that might appreciate slower than inflation. Here's what millionaires figured out that most people miss. These prestige assets don't generate cash flow, they consume it. A yacht doesn't pay you rent. It demands marina fees, fuel, maintenance, and insurance. A vacation home doesn't send you monthly checks, it sends you monthly bills. The wealthy know that true assets put money in your pocket, not take it out. But understanding this distinction leads to an even more powerful insight about how rich people actually think about money. Here's the secret that changes everything. Millionaires don't get rich waiting for their assets to appreciate. They get rich from assets that pay them every single month. While everyone else is hoping their investments will be worth more someday, the wealthy are collecting checks today. This isn't just a different strategy, it's a completely different mindset that separates those who build lasting wealth from those who just get lucky once in a while. Think about Warren Buffett for a second. He doesn't buy stocks hoping they'll double next year. He buys companies that send him dividend checks quarter after quarter, year after year, decade after decade. That's cash flow thinking, and it's why he's worth billions while people who chase hot stocks are still hoping to hit it big. The same principle applies to everything. A rental property that actually cash flows after expenses, a business that generates monthly profits, royalties from intellectual property, these create wealth that compounds. Most people have it backwards. They sacrifice present income for future possibilities. But millionaires flip that script. They want assets that improve their lifestyle today while also growing their wealth tomorrow. It's not about being impatient. It's about being smart enough to recognize that cash flow gives you options, and options give you power. But to really maximize this approach, you need to understand how the wealthy use something most people fear. Here's where things get really interesting. Millionaires aren't afraid of debt. They're afraid of stupid debt. While most people use leverage to buy cars, gadgets, and vacations, things that lose value, the wealthy use other people's money to buy assets that make them even more money. It's like the difference between using a loan to buy a boat versus using that same loan to buy a rental property that pays for itself and then some. Let me give you a real example that'll make this crystal clear. Robert Kiyosaki talks about buying his first investment property with a small down payment and financing the rest. The rent from tenants covered the mortgage payments, taxes, and maintenance, plus put extra cash in his pocket every month. Essentially, his tenants were paying off his loan while he built equity. That's using leverage like a millionaire. Meanwhile, his neighbor used the same loan amount to buy a fancy car that lost 20% of its value the moment he drove it off the lot. The wealthy understand that good debt makes you money, while bad debt costs you money, and they structure their entire financial lives around this principle. They'll gladly borrow money at 4% interest if they can invest it in something that returns 10%. But here's what's even more crucial. They never let their lifestyle expenses grow just because their income increases. And that leads us to one of the biggest traps that keeps people broke even when they start making serious money. This is probably the most counterintuitive thing you'll learn today. Most millionaires don't live like millionaires, at least not until they've actually built substantial wealth. They drive older cars, live in modest homes, and shop at regular stores because they understand something most people don't. Every dollar spent on lifestyle inflation is a dollar that can't work for them in building real wealth. Here's a perfect example. Take two doctors, both making $300,000 a year. Dr. Smith immediately upgrades to the luxury lifestyle. $80,000 car, $4,000 mortgage, designer clothes, expensive vacations. Dr. Johnson keeps driving his reliable Honda, stays in his starter home, and invests the difference. Fast forward 10 years, and Dr. Messick, Johnson is a multimillionaire, while Dr. Smith is still living paycheck to paycheck despite his massive income. The difference? Dr. Johnson avoided the trap of spending money to look rich before actually being rich. Millionaires understand that wealth isn't about what you spend, it's about what you keep and grow. They know that looking wealthy and being wealthy are often opposite strategies. The guy with the flashy car and expensive watch might actually be drowning in debt, while the person in jeans and a t-shirt might own half the businesses in town. But even more important than controlling lifestyle expenses is understanding where wealthy people actually put their money to multiply it. Here's where millionaires really separate themselves from everyone else. They don't just look for income, they look for income that can multiply without hitting a ceiling. While most people are trying to buy enough rental properties to replace their job, the wealthy are building or buying businesses that can scale, from making thousands to making millions, without them having to work proportionally harder. Think about the difference between owning 10 rental properties versus owning a software company. Those rental properties might generate $5,000 per month, but to double that income, you need to buy 10 more properties, more capital, more management, more headaches. But a software business that makes $5,000 per month could potentially scale to $50,000 per month with the right marketing and product improvements using mostly the same infrastructure and team. The truly wealthy understand that the biggest fortunes come from businesses that can serve thousands or millions of customers without requiring thousands or millions of times more work. Amazon started as a bookstore but became everything to everyone. Netflix began mailing DVDs but became the streaming giant. These aren't accidents. They're examples of scalable thinking that most people never consider. But even with this knowledge, there's still one more mental barrier that keeps most people from ever reaching true wealth. Here's something that might shake up everything you've been told about money. Millionaires don't trust the safe investments that financial advisors push on everyone else. They know that what looks safe on the surface, like bonds, savings accounts, and diversified index funds, can actually be the riskiest strategy of all when you factor in inflation and opportunity cost. While everyone else is playing it safe, the wealthy are taking calculated risks that actually protect and grow their purchasing power. Let me put this in perspective for you. If you park $100,000 in a safe savings account earning 2%, while inflation runs at 4%, you're actually losing 2% of your purchasing power every year. That's not safety. That's guaranteed wealth destruction in slow motion. Meanwhile, that same $100,000 invested in a well-researched business opportunity or real estate deal might carry more apparent risk but could preserve and multiply your wealth over time. Millionaires understand that the biggest risk isn't losing money. It's the risk of their money not working hard enough to outpace inflation and taxes. They'd rather take a calculated 10% chance of losing money for a 90% chance of beating inflation by a wide margin than accept a 100% chance of slow financial death through safe investments. But beyond all these strategies and insights, there's one fundamental difference in how wealthy people think that trumps everything else. After everything we've covered, here's the one habit that makes all the difference. Millionaires think like owners, not consumers. Every single financial decision they make comes down to this simple question: will this make me money, or will this cost me money? It sounds basic, but this mindset shift is so powerful that it literally rewires how you see every opportunity, every expense, and every choice in your life. When a regular person sees a new iPhone, they think about how cool it would be to have it. When a millionaire sees that same iPhone, they think about how they could create an app, start a phone accessory business, or invest the money instead of spending it on a gadget that'll be outdated in 2 years. It's not that wealthy people don't enjoy nice things. It's that they've trained themselves to see opportunities where others see expenses. Every dollar is a soldier in their wealth-building army, and they don't send soldiers on suicide missions. This owner mindset extends to everything. They don't just buy real estate, they think about how to add value to it. They don't just invest in stocks, they research companies like they're buying the whole business. They don't just save money, they think about how that money can work harder than they can. Once you start thinking like an owner instead of a consumer, you'll never look at money the same way again, and that's when your financial life really begins to transform. So here's the moment of truth. You now know exactly what millionaires never do with their money, and more importantly, what they do instead. But knowledge without action is just expensive entertainment. The real question is, what are you going to do with this information? Are you going to keep following the same financial advice that keeps most people broke, Or are you ready to start thinking and acting like the wealthy do? Look around at your current financial situation right now. How many of these wealth-destroying habits have you been unknowingly practicing? How much money are you losing every month to fixed expenses that don't build wealth? How many safe investments are slowly eroding your purchasing power while you sleep? And most importantly, when you look at your last major purchase, did you think like an owner or a consumer? The path to wealth isn't complicated, but it requires you to go against everything society tells you about money. It means saying no to the lifestyle trap, yes to calculated risks, and always asking yourself whether each dollar you spend is working for you or against you. The millionaires figured this out. Now it's your turn. Toneless. If this video opened your eyes to a completely different way of thinking about money, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. There's so much more to learn about building real wealth, and the next video might just contain the missing piece that changes your financial life forever. What specific wealth-building strategy are you going to implement first? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one.